Hey everybody, it's Jennifer with Genealogy Technology, and today I'm going to talk about the 7 things you can realistically expect to happen when you get a DNA test. Now, a lot of people are using 23andMe or Ancestry or Family Tree DNA. You're probably wanting to know, where your family came from originally. You may be adopted and looking for some answers there, or you may be a genealogist like me and you are looking for cousins, maybe to verify some family lines and things like that. So there are a ton of good reasons to get a DNA test. However, the reason I thought of this idea for a video was because my mom's cousin got a DNA test. She got her results back. She kind of looked at it and then she went, "Is that it?" So yeah, I think there are a lot of sort of expectations built up around a DNA test. So for example, my last name is Dunn. Dunn is a very English, Irish last name. My ethnicity is pretty much mostly English and Irish. So that, wow, that was kind of underwhelming for me really to see that. Like, I sort of knew that, as and the other names in my family, they're all very, England, Ireland, Scotland. So yeah, it really wasn't a big surprise. So a lot of people, you're getting a DNA test, you see that, you're like, oh, okay, well, what next? What do I do now? So I am going to tell you about 7 things to sort of realistically expect. Some of them are good and some of them are bad when you get a DNA test. The first thing you can expect when you take a DNA test is an ethnicity estimate. Now, this is the reason a lot of people take a DNA test. They just kind of want to know where their family came from, especially here in America, where, of course, we come from all over. A lot of people whose ancestors were brought over here due to slavery, they want to know, where back in Africa that their ancestors come from, which is a really interesting and good thing to know. Other people, maybe they were always told that their family came from somewhere and they want to confirm that. So yeah, this can be really, really cool. So I'm going to put mine up here. My Ancestry DNA, as you can see, it says I am just very, very European, though you probably could tell that by looking at me. Another cool thing that Ancestry shows, they show where your ancestors came to the United States. So you can see mine are Western North Carolina, which I really love because North Carolina was kind of a lawless place back in the day, and Northern Alabama. So, and that checks out with my research. But, if you're not a genealogist, then this could give you some ideas of, hey, where in the United States that your family came from. But now, as you see, this is not super detailed. You can then click into these when you're on the Ancestry site and see a little bit more, but it's not going to tell you the town in Ireland that your family comes from, for example. That's stuff that's going to take research. So I think a lot of people get a little bit disappointed when it doesn't get a little more clear than just sort of these percentages and these countries and things like that. And while we're at it, I will also show you my 23andMe DNA estimate. Well, as you can see here, this is a little more detailed. You can see some of those details on Ancestry too. I just didn't have it clicked in. But yeah, so it shows you some different things. And once again, 99% European. Boy, you can probably tell. But then also some interesting stuff. If you're really wedded to being Native American, so many people are just, sure that they have a Cherokee princess in their past, which, hey, a Cherokee princess is not a real thing. That's something we'll talk about in a different video. But yeah, so you can see that. You can see Sub-Saharan African. Oh, that's pretty interesting. I wonder where that came from. And also North African. So yeah, you can find some interesting ethnicity stuff here. However, if you were hoping to travel to the one little town in Germany that all your ancestors came from, a DNA test is not going to be enough. You're going to have to use that just as a tool to help you do the paper research or more DNA research to actually figure out from where your family originates. The next thing you can expect when taking a DNA test is messages. Especially when your DNA first crops up in the database, you are going to just get tons of people who have been notified that they have a new cousin, and they are going to message you. And some of those messages are going to be really helpful. They might say, hey, we're cousins and we're related through this line. These are people who know how to do genealogy. They sort of know what to do with their DNA, and they are welcoming you to the family. But a lot of times you're going to get people who they are asking you things like, hey, we're related. How are we related? And things like that. And so that can be a little overwhelming. Just know that you can't help everybody. So if you get 30 messages the first day that you get your DNA test back, you may not be able to really realistically just answer this sort of onslaught of messages of people asking, how you're related or trying to, figure things out. So it does help if you have a family tree. A lot of times you guys can work together, or you can work on the DNA and figure out, hey, I'm related to this person through whoever. Ancestry, they do provide some information. They do something called DNA circles that lets you know that, this is your common great-great-grandfather, great-great-grandmother, or whatever. So yeah, there's that, but you will just get a lot of messages. So be prepared for that and don't get overwhelmed. Speaking of messages, the next thing to be prepared for is to get contacted by adoptees. So these are people who you were adopted in the past, or maybe they are descended from somebody who was adopted. So they are trying to use DNA, which is a relatively new tool, of course, to figure out what their birth family is. This can be really, really heartbreaking. When I first did my 23andMe, especially, I just had a ton of adoptees contacting me, saying, we're third cousins or fourth cousins. Did you know this person back in 1968 who gave somebody up for adoption? And of course, I wasn't even alive then. And I didn't know. And third and fourth cousins, y'all, that can be just, hundreds of people. So I wasn't able to, help them so much. I was getting this other onslaught of messages. But fortunately, there are adoption angels out there, and they help people who are adopted and are trying to find, their birth family through DNA. And also just people are getting a little more savvy about adoption. You will probably get contacted by adoptees, and I really try to help those folks as best I can. I have yet to help an adoptee figure out their family. I work with them as much as I can. I'm happy to share information. I'm happy if I have a picture of somebody they want to look at, I'm happy to show that. But yeah, just sort of be prepared to maybe have your heart broken a little bit when people looking for their birth family. Okay, so I did just mention somebody who maybe they had somebody in their past who was adopted, or who did not know who their father was, or had been separated from brothers and sisters. Things like that happened, all too often. Unfortunately, it can be really sad. But that also leads to the next thing that you could potentially find with your DNA test, which is surprises. Now, of course, probably the worst and most shocking kind of surprise would be if, you were adopted and didn't know it, or your father's not your father. These things do happen, so just be prepared. You may also find out things about relatives that you didn't know. Maybe you have a cousin who's not really your cousin. Maybe that's just something they chose to keep to themselves. So surprises can cause a little bit of family drama, especially when they're close. So that's just keep that in mind. When you take a DNA test, you may be in for a surprise. Now, also, back in time, you may think that you're descended from this guy, and it turns out you're descended from the neighbor. That's a non-paternity event. These things happen, and DNA may help you shed some light on that. So, like I said, be prepared. You may not be who you think you are, and that can be a little cognitively weird for you. You may think you're ready, and then you're still gonna, be surprised. So, just letting you know. Another thing you can potentially find out about when you take a DNA test is health concerns. Now, 23andMe especially, they are FDA approved to show you some information about some potential health problems you could have. They will show you if you have a tendency to get things like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or the BRCA breast cancer genes. They'll show you if you have that. That can be concerning and worrying. Sort of like the surprises in your past. You may also not be ready for surprises about your health. So just really sort of think about this. Do you want to know if you have a potential to get Alzheimer's, for example? That's something only you can answer for yourself. Now, fortunately, 23andMe, they do let you hide those results, and they make you sort of sign a little consent saying, hey, I'm ready, I'm emotionally prepared to get this information. So now, of course, we are humans and we like opening Pandora's box. So you may, see this information and then say, oh, I wish I'd never done that. So once again, just be prepared for health information that you might not like. On the other hand, health information could help you, make good decisions about your health. Another thing you could get if you take a DNA test is arrested. So yeah, you probably heard about the Golden State Killer. They caught that guy, Joseph D'Angelo. I mean, he's the alleged guy, but they found him with DNA, so it seems like he's the guy. They caught him through DNA testing, through people who had done DNA testing just for, fun purposes, genealogy and finding heritage and things like that. So yeah, we've been collecting DNA from folks for a while now. And we have these big databases, and law enforcement, they do have to jump through some hoops, but they can use that to catch killers. And I read the other day that if they can find a third or fourth cousin in a DNA database, they can narrow that down to people of the right age, of the right location, and find those people pretty easily. So basically, we have no more privacy when it comes to our DNA. That's just a fact. So, if you killed somebody in the past, probably don't want to take a DNA test, but it doesn't really matter because your third or fourth cousins have already taken DNA tests. Okay, I feel like this video just took a really dark turn. So let's go back to something light and fun. If you get your DNA test, another thing that you could get is an awesome new hobby. Yay! But seriously, genealogy is really fun. For some people, finding out more about their ethnicity really opens up an interest in genealogy. A lot of times people who maybe have some kind of ethnicity they didn't anticipate. Maybe they always thought they were Scottish and it turns out they're very, very German or Italian. It lets them, go back and sort of try to figure out where all that came from. Also, like I said, you're going to get messages from people. Maybe they're going to say, hey, by the way, you're descended from somebody who came over on the Mayflower, or you're descended from somebody who was burned as a witch in Salem. So, just something like this could really, help pique your interest in genealogy. And then you could join one of the, fastest growing and largest hobbies here in the US and probably around the world as well. And you will, have something fun to do, something to suck up all your time and money on the weekends for sure. And last but not least, I want to hear about your experience with DNA testing. Was it all that it was cracked up to be? Were you overwhelmed? Were you underwhelmed? Yeah, just let me know in the comments below. And also, I would be honored if you would subscribe to my channel, which you can do that just by clicking the red subscribe button below. I have been Jennifer with Genealogy Technology, and thank you so much.